the very first thing that he said that struck me on that day when he came back from the airport, not only was it the very simple words, but it was the fact that he made it like a very simple statement. I mean, it was without condemnation, without opinion. It was a simple fact. It's like right now, if it was raining and I said, oh, it's raining outside, it would be a simple fact. You may or may not like the rain, but the fact is it would be raining. And in the same way, he said to us, there is no love in this material world. We were all hippies, we're from that generation. And the thrust of the hippie movement, particularly in San Francisco, was love. And not one living entity can say or deny that they are searching for love. I mean, even these little animals here, they can't go without love. If you have an animal in your house and you ignore that animal becomes very despondent. So every living creature in this world needs love, and innately desires to seek and find that love through relationship, through creating a situation with others. But we had all been disappointed. We had all been in love, or almost been in love, or thought we had been in love so many times, only to find the love was gone, the love was lost, the person or the object we love went away. So that very propensity of loving was also bringing a sorrow. And yet that wasn't really what love should be or was supposed to be. So we hadn't found it. And so when he said that, there is no love in this material world, such a simple and profound thing, but it brought about in my heart a great relief. I didn't have to look anymore. I didn't have to think about it anymore. It wasn't there. And it wasn't something that was negative at all, because he went on to explain what was real love. Why we were not finding love was because we didn't understand what was love. And he gave us, of course, the answer through Krishna. But it was like a relief. And that was the one thing that was the very first impression, strong impression. Well, we didn't know very much about Vaishnava etiquette. So, we have to get this fire ceremony together. We'd never seen one before. So we were told what to get. And the first thing was you had to get some ghee and or butter, and they're going to put it in the fire. So I'm thinking, my God, what a waste, and the fruit and the whole thing seemed kind of bizarre. But we're doing it. And Prabhupada was performing the yajna, and he gave us the bananas. So we looked at each other. There was 4 of us. What do you do with the banana? Well, you peel it. So somebody came up hurriedly and told us, no, you put it on the fire. So, okay, we looked at each other. All right, we put it in the fire. So next thing you know, he's, bow down. But his accent's very thick, and here you are, you've just gotten a new name, you've just got your neck beads on, the fire's crackling. Bow down. We didn't know. So we're looking to each other again, what to do. And then Haridas figured it out. So he gets on his hands and knees, and we all got on our hands and knees and started blowing on the fire right in Srila Prabhupada's face. And Srila Prabhupada's eyes could become very saucer-like, humongous. So they got very large. And he picked up his kartals, cling, and started a kirtan. Of course, he was asking us to bow down, but we had no concept or instruction in Vaishnava etiquette. This was like the 3rd initiation to go on. And therefore, we were just confused souls and exhibiting our confusion through this completely astounding behavior. In the beginning, we were curious how to chant. What do you do when you chant? And Srila Prabhupada said 2 things. What to do and what to think. This was the question on our part. You don't do anything and you don't think anything. You simply hear. So to this day, that is my endeavor, is to somehow or other hear this chanting. Anything from India, if it was just like coming from India, was like very exotic and attractive. And if it came from India, it must automatically have something to do with Srila Prabhupada, because he was from India too. I mean, this was just like a whole new realm of mystique here. And one day an aerogram came, so Janaki took it up to his apartment, but we were just dying to know what it was. It was from India. So, after a while, we both went in there, and we saw that it had been opened. So, we're waiting for him to tell us. I mean, why wouldn't he want to tell us about this aerogram from India? But he didn't say anything. So finally Janaki says, "Well, Swamiji, got a letter from India, huh?" And he goes, "Yes." Like, "Well, was it good news?" He goes, "Yes." "Well, what was it?" He goes, "Oh, my sister has died." "Oh." And he goes, "Yes, she was a pure devotee. She was a Vaishnava." We were like stunned, but then suddenly the realization of his, equanimity, of this connection with Krishna being on the real absolute level. You just got that glimpse of it, of eternity, and we were part of it, and there was no loss. When we first arrived in Mayapur, it was the days of the brick hut with the thatched roof and the water pump, and the mud everywhere. And we arrived like that, and Srila Prabhupada was staying in the brick hut, and Shamsundar was the secretary, and myself, I was the cook. And I have to speak a little bit about the situation to sort of let you understand, the mood that was there for me, which was I always wanted to be as cook like this. And so Krishna had rewarded me. Govinda, Dasi, and Gaurasundar, they were my early ideals, like the family that was engaged in the service of the Guru. So now here it was, and somehow my husband and myself were engaged in the service of the Guru. And this time in Mayapur, I was faced with not only service of Guru, but service of husband, service of daughter, and trying to maintain my sanity in a situation that was materially impossible. There was no facilities. I was living in a tent. I had 2 buckets to cook with, and the servant would come every day and grab one of the buckets right before the meal was ended to heat the water for Prabhupada's bath. Like, we never thought, I didn't even think, well, why don't you go get yourself a bucket, Prabhupada's servant wanted the bucket. Oh, yes. But then I was left holding the one bucket, really needing, for chapatis, and also it was that was one aspect. But the real thing was, I'd start out the day having to confront the treasurer. Now, the duty of a treasurer is not to give money out. It's to hold on to every paisa, no matter what, or no matter who. So I would usually have a rather royal argument with the treasurer concerning funds for Srila Prabhupada's Bhoga. Then I'd collect my daughter and go out and have an argument with the rickshawwala who was going to take me to the boat, where I had another argument concerning the money, because you see, being white, they expected at least 10 times the amount, but the treasurer was only going to give us what the locals paid, no matter what. And he wouldn't pay for my daughter, and they wanted my daughter to pay, no matter what. And this caused a bitter argument every single day. So then I finished that fight. On the other, it used to be when you get off the boat at the other side, there was a guy that you'd have to pay a tax in order to walk up the bank. So there was another argument. Then another fight with the rickshawwalas who were going to take you to the sabji market and to fight with everybody there who you had to deal with, and then do it all over again to go back to get to the other side. So by the time I get back there, I would just be, and trying to, hold on to my kid and, keep her happy, and then start cooking. And then have the servant come and take away the stove just before lunch so that, to double my anxiety, which was already at peak level. So I started thinking, actually, what am I doing, And on top of that, every day I'm thinking, how can I please Srila Prabhupada? And I was really thinking like this. I really wanted to cook perfectly for him. So I'd always be thinking about it all day. I mean, even when I wasn't cooking, after I'd cooked, I'd be thinking already for the next day, how can I do it perfectly? And then it seemed like every single day he was telling me something that I was doing imperfectly. So I can remember that one day there was too much salt we'd always put salt, pepper, and nimbu. So one day there was too much salt, so then the next day I took less, but then there was too little. And I was thinking, I can't get it right. I can't do it right. Everything I do is wrong. Actually, maybe I shouldn't even be cooking. And the minute that idea went in my mind, I started feeling, yeah, actually, someone else should be cooking. And I was thinking, yeah, I'll just go tell Prabhupada to get someone else, or I'll get someone else who can be better than me at it. And I started actually feeling better. I was thinking, the problem's almost solved. All I have to do is tell Prabhupada, and that's it. So the next day I go in there, full of this idea. And the thing was, I'd heard his godbrothers were coming for lunch. And that was another thing. Prabhupada was getting criticized for having a female cook. I was a cook, and then therefore I felt, badly about that too. I mean, there was other criticisms. That was just one of them. So I'm going to, I find out his godbrothers are coming for lunch. So I think, well, he certainly won't have me cook today, so I'll tell him tomorrow. But he calls me in the room, and he starts to tell me what he wants for lunch. So I couldn't very well say, well, Srila Prabhupada, not today, because, everything's in motion. So, okay, I go out and I make the lunch. And I come to bring it in, and I look, he's in the front part of the room, and I'm looking in, and there he is at the end like a royal king. And on each side are, a row of old stately Vaishnavas with dandas. And it was an impressive sight. But I felt completely intimidated. So what I did, because I had to go in there, is I took my sari and I put it over my head like this. And then I covered my hands, and I got down on the floor, my hands and knees, and I had the plate. So the only thing was the plate, and I crawled in with just the plate. And I put it down, and then I was making my obeisances, and I started slithering back out. And I heard Srila Prabhupada say, yes, she cooks for me, and all I do is criticize her. But she would slit her throat for me, and I would do the same for her. And when he said that, I completely disintegrated. By the time I got to the other door, I was still covered up with my sorrow. It was just completely wet with tears, because I realized at that point how mundane my whole consciousness had been, and how my whole dealings with this whole issue had been based upon, a misunderstanding of the relationship between the guru and the disciple. And in fact, every day I was thinking, I want to do it perfect. How can I do it perfect? What do you want? And he was telling me. He wasn't criticizing me. I was just taking it in that very mundane manner. But because I wanted to know how it could be more pleasing to him, he told me that I was in such an illusion as to the position of a disciple and what the relationship was, of servitudeship meant you pat me on my back, that, my misconception. And when I heard that, I realized actually it was true. There was no doubt about it. It was absolutely true. My mood was like that, and I would have done anything. But it had never occurred to me, actually, how Prabhupada would do anything for us. And then I realized he already was doing everything for us. And so my insignificance at that point was immense. But my gratitude and my, love for him was certainly, or the potential for that love was certainly revealed at that point. Shyam Sundar was carving the first Jagannaths, and this was during the time when we were still trying to understand and follow the initial principles. And Prabhupada paid us a surprise visit at our apartment to see how the work was going. And so he's looking at this one, that one, and the other one, all three of them. And on the top of Subhadra's head, or was it Balaram? On the top of Balaram's head, I believe, it was Balaram or Jagannath. At any rate, there was a package of Pall Mall. And Prabhupada said, "What is that?" And Shamsundar said, "Oh." And Prabhupada said, "That's all right. It is very difficult to give up smoking." He says, "But why not one less every day? One less every day until finished." He said, "Don't let such a small thing as a little cigarette stand between you and Krishna." It was such a loving, gentle instruction, but it was very clear. And Shamsundar, he followed that instruction. So there was his tolerance. But at the same time, he didn't say, "Yes, go on smoking." But he said how to stop it. So it was a positive way of prohibiting. What happened was, again, this was my cooking pastimes with Srila Prabhupada. So, everybody else would be going through bead bags. I'd have this metal trunk full of, the kerosene stove, pots, pans, rolling pins, and, rice, dal, chapati, and flowers. So we're going on Vrindavan Prikrama, but we went in a bus. So I had my trunk with us. And the devotees' prasadam was being provided somehow or other. At this one place we stopped, and it was near Govardhan Hill. And there was this veranda, right off here was the street, and here was the veranda, covered over, and here was all these doors, like it was a dharamshala. But the thing that was really struck me funny was when you'd open the doors, there would be these rooms, like a dharamshala, it's just a room. You've been to India, so you know it's just a room. But there was no back wall. Just open it up, and here was these rooms, and that was right out there was the rest of the world. Anyway, into one of these rooms, Prabhupada went to have his massage, and the rest of us were sitting out there, and I was cooking out on this veranda. And the thing about cooking for Prabhupada, as soon as he had his massage and he came in, he had to come and have the plate ready. Like, he didn't wait around or say, "Oh, excuse me, Srila Prabhupada, but blah, blah, blah." It's like, there it was. So there I was out on the sidewalk, and I really had to have it together. And I only had so much fuel and so much chapati dough, and, it was a tight little schedule. You're used to schedules, so you know. Anyways, he comes out. I had it ready. We all sit down. There was the brahmacharis and the sannyasis on one side, the grihasthas and their wives on the other. Just as we start to eat, woof, 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 woof. 2 dogs come. Yap, yap, yap. And up went the sannyasis and a couple of brahmacharis. They were going to save us from these dogs. And up went Prabhupada. He says, "No, stop." And he took his chapati and he tore it in half, and he gave one to one dog, one to the other, and then he goes, "Hup, Jow." And they just walked away. And then he turned and said, "You never know who they are, these dogs in Vrindavan." And it was really intense, because we had this sudden glimpse at the fact that we were in the holy Dham, and we were seeing dogs, but actually Prabhupada was seeing spirit souls, and we didn't know who they were. And Prabhupada didn't discriminate. He didn't play with dogs. He didn't have them in his house, but he didn't kick them either. He didn't mistreat any living being. One time in Mayapur, I was there too, and he learned the devotees were beating the dogs, and he said, "They should be beat." And he meant the devotees, not the dogs. And the devotees were, actually even proud of this dog beating activity. I remember that. For some reason, they had thought it was okay to beat these dogs. And you've seen the dogs in India. There's no hair, no flesh. They're just poor guys, and they yap a lot. Prabhupada, he was always showing concern. I think that's one aspect. genuine concern, not just some superficial pat in the head, and. And yet he wasn't ever falsely sympathetic or sentimentally sympathetic. Anyway, this boy was his servant at the time. And Jamuna was learning to do deity worship, and Prabhupada was personally instructing her. And he had his little deities there. So one night there was this arti, Purushottam was there, and Jamuna was doing the arti. And my daughter came in, and they offered the flower, and they gave it to Srila Prabhupada. And just about that time, for some reason, Saraswati thought to leave the room. And Prabhupada took the flower, and he threw it at the back of her head, and it hit her. And she went down and picked it up and marched right back over to him and popped the flower in his mouth. And Prabhupada smiled at her. And Purushottam, later he mentioned, he left Prabhupada's service. There was many reasons, but this was one of the reasons, because he saw his spiritual master behaving frivolously with a female during arti. One other time, she went to India when she was 4.5 from Calcutta. Prabhupada Pashaka likes this story, how Prabhupada would tease her, I'm going to put a stamp on your forehead and send you to the Gurukul. And she'd go, no, no. He goes, yes, I'll put a stamp on your forehead and you'll go to Gurukul. So at any rate, eventually she went to Gurukul, but her father took her. And a year later she came to visit me in India, and I picked her up at the Delhi airport. And the Delhi temple was still in Bengali market at that time, and I don't know where the devotees were, but they weren't there, and only Srila Prabhupada was there, and I came in with Saraswati. And he goes, oh, you were come back from Gurukul. He goes, recite something. And she recited the first verse from the first canto of Bhagavatam. And he was so pleased with her. It was very good. Yes, you must always speak like that. And then he took 20 rupees and he hands to me, goes, here, buy her a dress. And I'm like, oh, I can't take this money from you. Srila Prabhupada goes, no, you must buy her a new dress. One other time I had another experience with him. These are what you can call like mystical experiences. Mm-hmm. But, Shamsundar and I had to go to prison at one point, and we were actually supposed to be in prison for like 5 years. And somehow we just couldn't believe it would happen, but we had to go. And then after 24 days, we actually got out. And we got down to San Francisco. We were up in Seattle. And Prabhupada had arrived while we were in prison. And it was totally inexplicable, our release. And we got out, and and all the devotees were at the airport when we arrived. And they said, hurry up, Prabhupada's here. So we ran home, got changed, and went in, and I remember I went up to, at this point he was in Carl Street, knocked on his door, and he said, oh, Malati, come in. Just last night I was thinking 5 years was too much. And I just knew immediately, because even the parole officer did not know why we were getting out. She said, because I was hesitating to sign the paper, I didn't know what it was, and she goes, it's your release. I'm signing it fast, and she goes, I don't know why, because I wouldn't have approved this. It went over my head. She didn't like that. So it was amazing. Probably I was just thinking last night, 5 years was too much. And then he handed me a sari. He'd just come back from India. And he says to I think it was Upendra or Kartikeya, bring that. And it was his case, and he pulls in and he pulls out a sari, and he gave me a sari, and it was a white Bengali sari with a green and red border. I remember that. The special factor, or the special quality, I should say, that Srila Prabhupada exhibited that set him apart from other teachers who we had come in contact with, or other so-called teachers, or other persons that were purporting some form of so-called spirituality. We had come in contact with a few. We had come in contact with one yogi. Our friends had joined up with him, and he put him to work on a pig farm. So we thought that was a very bizarre form of spirituality. Pig farms are not very suchi places. And they'd had a snake, and they had to feed the guy this live rat every week or two, and that just seemed very unusual to us, just for an example. And there was other people that weren't, for example, Sybil Leek, if you're familiar with her, she is if she's still alive, she was a great witch and very famous, you know, not just a little witch, but a really big one. And we went to see her at this big auditorium, and but every one of these contacts we had, it was like Prabhupada would use the expression, chewing the chewed. There was no taste afterwards. And there was certainly no loving exchange. And this was the thing, that Srila Prabhupada, he came to give, and he didn't come to exploit. And he had genuine care and concern for every one of the persons that came to him, and we definitely felt that. And we never, ever before felt that love and care and concern from anyone else in our life, not even our own parents. So this was a real process of falling in love. That we were falling in love with Srila Prabhupada, and we were responding to that warm, deep, great love that he was offering us. Je anilo premadana karuna prachu